the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to part 2 of Grey Hat Beard, show 35. If you haven't listened to part 1, do go back and listen to the latest news. We did a bit of a slightly longer episode as we talked about the amazing stuff that will come out from Build. So do go and listen to that if you haven't heard it already. Because in part 2, we're going to be talking about the maturity model for Microsoft 365. And those eagle-eyed among you who are watching on video will see that we don't have an Al. Fortunately, he's had to disappear off for part 2. But we are joined by Simon and Simon. So Simon Hudson, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey there, guys. A few of you may know me. I've been around the scene for quite a while. I was the founder of Cloud2, coming up to 13 years ago. Cloud2 was set up originally as a SharePoint company. We had the brilliant idea that we should stop trying to design SharePoint intranet from the ground up, and we should pre-make them, and then just let people work out the 20% that was different. And that was our business model. Cloud2, I'm excited to say, has been sold. Well, I didn't make much out of that, but somebody else did, so that's great. These days I run, it's good to see your kids go off and be successful. These days I run a clinical company and inevitably a Microsoft 365 consulting company.
Fantastic. Thank you, Simon. And Simon Doy.
Hi there. So Simon Doy, I'm founder of I Think 365, which is a small boutique Microsoft 365 consultancy where we build stuff in the cloud on the 365 and Azure platform. I've been sort of running the Leeds Power Platform / SharePoint user group with Simon and Gary as well in the past too for nearly 7 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
been intensely for the last year, hey?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, we've been doing our lockdown sessions, haven't we? I think we're on
every other week.
Yeah, 24 lockdown sessions.
24. Wow.
So that's pretty good. Pretty good going.
It's amazing. Thank you very much. And we'd like to have our community guests, and I think you two have sort of shown your dedication to the community, which is fantastic. For those from UK or who know the UK, you will notice there is a little bit of a north-south divide, and I'm feeling very outnumbered from that state. So I hope the accents aren't too strong for everyone, and you can pick up on that northern twang. Okay.
All I'm going to say is it's about time.
Touche. So, as I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about the maturity model for Microsoft 365. And you may be thinking, what is it and who is it for? So, Simon, do you want to kick off with that?
Right. So what is the maturity model for Microsoft 365? So the idea of it is really to enable organizations to understand what they can leverage and the impact that they can get and the benefit they can get from Microsoft 365. And so how we've sort of broken it down is these levels of maturity, starting at sort of a level 100, which is your default position, moving up through the levels to a level 500, which is sort of this panacea. And each level, there will be benefits and impacts to the organization. And what we've done is really the maturity model is for the business. So it's, the idea is it's written for the business. It's not technical, and it enables business owners, consultants to kind of say, right, this is what you can do with the 365 platform. And we've as I said, we've sort of divided up into competencies, which are around things like collaboration and communication, those everyday tasks which businesses need to be able to do and deliver when you to have a successful business. That's what it's all about, really.
Sorry to Simon H. I did mute you briefly just to stop some of the echo, so apologies there. And I can't unmute you now, and I've obviously made it too hard. There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, if I've got echo, I'll deal with that in a minute. But anyway, I think one of the other things is, this is not the Microsoft take on how you use the 365 platform. This is a different approach. Microsoft use lots of buzzwords and lots of technology, and it's technology-led. This, as Simon said, is very much business-led and is a much more sort of fundamental way of saying what our business needs, what our business processes, how can the tech support that? But we bring the tech in last. We think about the business processes first. but from a sort of a technology orientated point of view, but without actually naming technology features. So, and then as Simon says, we've broken that out because it's a massive space. So we've broken it out into this series of competences, and those competencies are the kinds of things that all businesses have. So how do you handle collaboration and communication and content management? And actually there is some development and customization and something a bit more technical, but also how do you socialize your insights through the staff, all that kind of stuff, things which underpin every functional business.
But so it's going into, as you say, hitting every business. So it doesn't matter whether you're pharmaceutical, financial services, Bob's Pets and things like that. There's going to be commonality that you have between there, and you focus on that sort of thing rather than, so you're not looking at SharePoint, you're looking at collaboration and that aspect.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's a really good point as well. Depending on the kind of organization that you are, you're going to, you may not want to be a level 500. You might only want to be level 300. So you've got these 5 levels. Level 300 is what we see as, this is where an organization needs to be. It needs to be at this competency level to do collaboration well, to do communication well. But depending on if you're, say, in a heavy regulated industry, then you might want to have your management of content at level 400 or 500, because that's what you need to do. You need to be thinking about retention of content and how you manage the life cycle of your content in your 365 tenant. So but it's really up to the organization to think about where it wants to be, and then you can use the maturity model to work out, like, is it there, understand where it currently is, and then is it at the right level.
Why would you not just do it?
Oh, well, I guess people do try and just do it. The problem is that without that insight into what does good look like, what does adequate look like, what does great look like, you don't know which it you're going to do. And people don't differentiate between the different business needs and business processes, and it all gets horribly muddled and mixed up. So if you put a marketing person and a comms person in the room, and you kind of think they might be aligned. They're not going to be aligned at all, because they still have some fundamentally different needs. And so what we do is we try and create this. It's quite a sophisticated model, but you can break out the bits and go, well, I know that today for this job or this part of my business process, I need to fix this issue, and you can go and grab the part of the maturity model that is focused in on that and go, okay, so let's have a look. Where are we now? And usually people look at it and are shocked, because they're at the what I acutely call the rubbish level, which is level 100. The initial level, let's be kind, which is actually where everybody starts. Everybody starts at a pretty rubbish kind of level, and then they try and work up, if they're smart, to something that's that's functional, repeatable, and adequate. But everybody starts with, we don't know what we're doing, we're just going to try it and see what happens. What the maturity model does is it gives you a set of tools to say, in this area, you're probably here, rubbish. You can be pretty good if you get to there. And then when you want to get to be adequate, you can go and do these things. And it will get you to this level where everything is under control and measurable and controllable and repeatable, and you kind of feel reassured that part of your organization is running pretty well. And then it gives you guidance, well, how do you do that using the technology?
And in terms of that, how you do things, what sort of thing is that? So that's how to use the technology, how you push those things out, or?
So it's more about, well, okay, so this is complex, and even we struggle to explain it in words, but there's some great pictures. So the different levels are built around a set of criteria, and again, we've got some slides that maybe you can drop into this later, which kind of summarize that quite nicely. But if we were just to use some keywords to describe that, at level 100, things tend to be ad hoc and reactive and uncontrolled or unconsidered. Then by the time you've moved up through level 200, where you're trying to make things repeatable and you're reducing the amount of variability in firefighting, you get to sort of level 300, where things are documented. People know what they should be doing and what the company thinks you should do or want you to do. And mostly people are doing it because there'll be policies and processes documented to tell you to do that. And there might be a bit of feedback to make sure that people do. And the environment tends to be controlled and stable and understood. It isn't perfect, but it's pretty good. So then for each of, so I've given you like that top first 3 levels. So for each of those statements I gave you, within the maturity model, if I was to go and grab communication, it'll say something like, there is no coordination around your communication plan. That would be level 100. By the time you get to level 300, it'll say things like, the company has identified that email will be the standard mechanism for communicating with external organizations. Internally, typically you will do this, and you'll have these kind of controls. And there'll be a series of statements, I mean, actually dozens, or in some cases hundreds of statements that define what these different levels are. And you as an organization can go in and pick those and go, actually, we're pretty comfortable if we grab this statement, this statement, this statement, and say, this is what we will be doing to achieve level 300. So it's actually got a lot of granular guidance, but what it doesn't do is say, you must use Outlook with these settings. It says what you should do is have a robust email system with archiving and oversight and some of these other sort of governance and guidance things.
And so it's very much up to organisation, as you say, to make that decision about where they want to get to, and then they can make the choices about how they go ahead with things as well. It's not just everyone has to be level 500. You can look at where you want to be and where you want to, and I guess prioritise as well. You may want to get everyone to 500 over time, but not all straight away. You can sort of have that choice and look at those gaps as well.
I mean, the reality is that no organisations can be level 500 across everything. I mean, 500 is really hard, and it isn't nirvana and probably inappropriate. The level of control that you have to invest in, and the level of proactive feedback and AI and all that kind of stuff makes 500 untenable for every part of every organisation, or even every part of any organisation. What you can do, though, and this is really important, is it's granular within the organisation. You might say, we're a clinical company. Therefore, our governance processes and the way that we do external communications, Mr. Musk, have to be spot on. And so we're going to try and make sure that we're really good at that. But frankly, what happens down at our internal content management is less important, and 300 might be fine. And that might be in the marketing department. But if you move over to the operations team, they go, actually, our business process has got to be at level 500. That means that our content's got to be pretty good, but the comms isn't important to us because we don't do that externally. So you can use this set of tools both in terms of a granular way of looking at the different business processes, but also granularly, if that's a real word, within your organization and go, this part is operating in startup mode, let them run at the low levels. This part needs to be absolutely rock solid, get them to the high levels.
And I guess the important thing is you've got a set of questions and things, as you say, you can apply to different areas. You can use as you want. All the stuff's there for you to use that you can then apply to the degree that you want to do. I'm debating. I think we might come back to in terms of we'll cover later about how to get started with this and how to cover into actually using it. You mentioned that it's not driven directly from Microsoft, but it's come from the community. What's the sort of history behind it?
So it's come really from Sadie Van Buren's work. She built a model back in 2010. I think it was 10 years of the SharePoint maturity model. So she built a SharePoint maturity model back in 2010, which got a lot of use. And then it'd have been, I think it was March last year, Sadie and Mark Anderson and Emily Mancini sort of started to get together and talked about wanting to do a maturity model, but updating it for Microsoft 365. And then funnily enough, I've been thinking about it because I was thinking, how do you get, our customers to think about how they can adopt 365 and get more value from it? And then Mark was tweeting about the fact that they were looking to resurrect the 365 maturity model. And so I was like, I'd be really interested. Funny, Simon and I have both been thinking about this and said, we'd love to get involved. And, it's fantastic. Mark was like, come on, let's jump on a call and let's see if see if we can work together. And that was.
And in terms of your involvement, what sort of thing has that been? Is that defining those new checklists, defining new questions, and
Yeah. So it's been a real sort of community effort. So just sitting down, first of all, was picking out and working out what competencies we should go for. So there's been a lot of discussion around, should we have a security competency, or should security be an attribute of managing of content, collaboration, and so having those sort of discussions, should there be a governance and information management, or should that again be part of another competency? So that's all those discussions. And then what we started to do is we started divvy up the competencies, and really in groups of 2, I would say, start working on that, and then pushing that into the Microsoft 365 community docs, which is where it all is.
Okay. So that's the main home for finding things, is on the community docs, and we will put links in the show notes. I must remember to get that off you before we finish up, and get the links and details to that. As well.
And it's open to anybody. We really are open. We would love people to contribute and tell us where we've got it wrong, and and really help make the model better, because that's what it's all about. A lot of this is from our experiences, but there's lots of other people with experiences with lots of different market segments and industries, which would give valuable feedback. And so what happened at the start of this year is we then had the PMP Sharing is Caring initiative, and we've got a sort of a Microsoft 365 practitioners, which its aim is to enable the community to get involved, and we can talk about the maturity model. Anybody can get involved and give us their feedback, their success stories, just help make that model better. So
yeah, that's pretty good. And if people wanted to get involved, what's the main areas that maybe you have gaps that you know about that you'd love to see people fill?
Yeah, so we've got there's I think we've got 3 competencies which are still being worked on. We've got one on infrastructure. We've got one on analytics and data.
Whoa, hang on. Infrastructure. This is SharePoint Online. You don't have to care about infrastructure anymore. That's all Microsoft's problem, surely. What do you mean by infrastructure there?
Well, that's probably why it's been last. But you've got hybrid environments, haven't you? You've got Azure AD Connect. What would a mature organization look like? Maybe some people just install it on a single server, but maybe you need to have some monitoring and some management of that. That might be a more mature.
Is the model focused on SharePoint Online, or should it work for 2019 and others as well?
It's not focused on any specific technology, which has been, that was one of the first things we decided when we looked at the original Sadie Van Buren SharePoint maturity model. That was very much geared around the things that SharePoint did and the technical underpinnings of that. And we decided quite early on that while that absolutely has its place and actually might be on our future roadmap to go back and revisit that, it would be much better not to have it tied to the particular technologies. So we've unpicked all that. The competencies are not content management as it would be done in SharePoint. It's, well, what does content management look like? And we try to cover the entire spectrum, from people sticking things on file servers and floppy disks, maybe not floppy disks, but because the younger people don't know what they are. But to look at the full spectrum of technologies that people are maybe using, and then as we go up the maturity tree, look at how you can leverage the more sophisticated technologies that are available in. Let's just pick one random cloud platform, Microsoft 365, and say, well, how would you do it using the capabilities that are in there? But actually, if you were that way inclined, you could take almost everything that we've written and transpose it if you're using a Google Cloud or an Amazon Cloud or something else, because the lessons are really business lessons, and you just say, how can I enable those features using my preferred technology?
Yeah.
So I mean, you've kind of reiterated the business focus, right? It's it's not as much about the technology. Have you found that when you've been talking to organizations and using this model as part of those discussions, that it's actually making them think in slightly different ways to what they've thought before, that maybe they have been a bit too over technology driven? How have they found it?
So my observation, and as you know, I stand with my feet in two different camps here. My observation is that typically there are two different camps. There's the IT people and the business people. And it's not that they don't ever speak, that would be harsh, but they don't speak the same language. That's the trouble. And they have different motivations and depths of understanding. What the maturity model helps them do is create a common understanding. So the technical folk can go, okay, well, I understand that this is the business need, and it's been quantified for me in terms of, how sophisticated does it need to be, and so they can get it from that side. And at the same time, the business folk can look at it and go, okay, so these are features that we could take advantage of. They apparently are supported by the technology somewhere. We didn't know that. Why don't we talk to each other? And we tell you what we want based on these business capabilities. You tell us what can be achieved with the technology you look after. So it's about bringing those two separate sets of minds together. And actually, going back to that Musk illusion earlier, the beauty of it is actually getting two different perspectives on a problem, and usually end up producing a better solution than having one set of perspectives.
No,
Yeah,
that's true.
because I think the maturity model, it's that definitely that kind of relationship between IT and the business. And over the last decade, definitely there's been this wanting to make that gap as small as possible, that IT becomes an enabler of business, and that they're thinking about Microsoft 365 and other technologies like Google Cloud as services to enable the business to do what they need to do. And I think that's a big mind shift from where we've kind of come from in the past, and the cloud kind of technologies are really kind of aligned to that way of thinking as well, which I think this maturity model does help have those conversations, definitely.
Yeah, if we can enable developers to be able to build cool stuff without less sort of pleading that they want to do, we want to do this AI cognitive service, then that's great, isn't it? It's business people being able to see what is possible and the impacts that something can have. And sometimes it's not that difficult, then I think that's fantastic.
I would say over the, when you say it's not that difficult, I have seen over the years that kind of IT business split has got better, that there is more consideration from the IT side around what the impact of the business is, more consideration also from the business. And I think the use of smartphones and kind of attitudes like that has got people a little bit more digitally engaged, and people realizing how important and useful it is to the base business. That I think that I don't think that conversation has gone away, don't get me wrong, but I think it's more fruitful than it has been certainly over the, I don't want to say how many years I've been working in the industry and things on that. It's been a nice progression as well. Now, if people listen to this and thinking, fantastic, we've got that divide and we want to help with this, where would people get started with the maturity model?
So, the first thing would be go to Google Bing and type in maturity model for Microsoft 365. You're going to get a link pretty much at the top to the Microsoft Community Docs, and just read the introduction and start digesting that content. That's the first place to get involved. And
so
maybe
when you
then
say content, so there's kind of a list of you've talked about the I forgot the word, sorry, not pillars, but you've got the kind of 100 to 500 competencies. Thank you. You've got the competencies there you can view. Is it just a case of reading those questions? How would people actually use it?
Well, reading is a really good place to start. We might just tell you what those competencies are, because it's going to keep coming around. So right now we've got 8 competencies published, which doesn't mean they're finished. Just means that they're as good as we could get them in this first round. But we've got competencies around collaboration, communication, people and communities, search, staff and training, business process, management of content, and customization and development. So we've got a full set of competencies for all of those that should be living, breathing, evolving documents. So Simon said, the first thing to do is go and find those, take from them what you need. I mean, they're quite big, but they're also very intended to be very digestible. You can go, I just want to know about where are we now, and read down until you go, oh, that feels horribly familiar. And then you go, where we'd like to be, you read down a bit further and go, that feels about where we want to get to. So that's the first thing is, absorb them, assimilate them, figure out what they mean for you. And then the question is, well, what do you mean by getting involved? Do you want to get involved by going and implementing, or do you want to get involved by going and helping us improve the model itself? And that's two different directions.
I was thinking they're more, if you want to measure where you are, would you just read the docs and kind of tick things off? Is there a checklist as part of those? Would you have an internal app that you kind of track to where you are? Is there any tools to help beyond the documents at all?
So when Simon did a, I think Simon needs to talk about this. We basically what we did is Simon lifted the characteristics out of each of the competencies, and those characteristics describe kind of the state that your organization might be in. So maybe for content, it's we've got 10 documents called proposal 1, proposal 2 with the date on the end, and that means I
found another one of those the other day. Sorry.
So you could use that
not internally, in case anyone's listening from CPS, don't worry.
So you could use that to kind of understand, you use this Excel spreadsheet to read through those characteristics and say, well, we've got the majority of our characteristics, we're seeing a level 100, so that's where we are. And then you would then say, right, well, in that competency, you're looking at the benefits, this is where we would like to get to. And you talked about it earlier, Kevin, about the thing about it is driving that focus. Where do you focus first to get the most, the best return on your investment? And if you can use the maturity model to kind of help you do that and pick out the areas which you need to start with first. And that's what we've been doing with the 365 practitioner sessions, is we've been trying to align them to where you would start in the maturity model. So next week, so on the 15th of June, we've got the practitioners group around management of content, because we feel that's an important place to start to get value out of the 365 platform. But we will then move into collaboration and communication in subsequent sessions. But yeah, so that's where you can sort of how you can measure the organization.
And I guess from that point of view, that the model operates as a semi-quantitative tool. It's not a full, put your answers in and it give you a magic number, because frankly, businesses are too heterogeneous to do that. Not as heterogeneous as people would think, but they're a bit too diverse. So it's not intended to just plug the numbers in to see what the magic number is and then go about ignoring that. Every level for every competency is criteria anchored. So you could go, well, we want to be at level 300 because that's what the strategy says. And you can go, right, are we doing these things? And you go, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Well, we're kind of a bit of the way on that. Marketing are doing this. So you can go down and sort of assess yourself against the various competencies. And the way most people do that, they either sort of self-analyze or they'll do it in the form of a workshop. So they go, we really need to up our game on communication. Let's get the stakeholders in a room together and we'll work through the model and go, right, when it says we should be doing this to be level 300, are we really doing that? Where are we doing that? And how do we make sure that is, the strategy? So it gives people that sort of workshop driven tooling. I mean, we have got some prototype sort of quantitative tools, but they're nothing more than that at the moment. And actually, a lot of the value comes from having people discuss where they really think they are, as opposed to some manager make stuff up.
Sorry, Sam, you say you got some prototype ones, so ones that would analyze your environment and see where things are in there?
That would be lovely, wouldn't it? No.
Okay.
No.
No, I didn't think so.
No, more prototyping as much as you can use basically a spreadsheet-like experience where you can go down this series of competencies, count them up or measure them. There's some weighting, and it will give you a score against certain criteria, and some things where you're especially weak or especially strong in that. But it's a prototype at the moment. It hasn't been tested in anger, and as I say, I think that the real value is getting people to talk it through, think it through, not just take a Microsoft Secure Score and wave it or lament over it and say that's it. So it's much more of an active tool than just being a scoring tool.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, being able to discuss it and have that conversation. Having said that, I think it's nice to be able to track change over time with things. So to be able to have a score and things over that is quite nice. So yeah, we'd certainly be interested in hearing about that over time as well. It was when I did hear Simon talking about this a while back. I can't remember where it was on. And that was my first thought, was some way of being able to track that over time.
I think that's where the levels come in, right? So we've talked about competencies, and then we've got levels within those competencies. So I've just had a skim through the development and customization one, and you've got a lot of low code and pro code, but you might have a team of developers. It doesn't mean that you're instantly going to be foot level 400, because it's the knowledge within that development team that will give you that maturity. And I think it's a really good way of looking at it, to go, hang on, there's a statement there that seems like it applies to us, and then it gives you that kind of number, that level, so then you can see yourself on the scale. And I can see, as things progress, they'll become more specific as to what practices organizations have put around levels of customizations. I use in Power Platform, but with DevOps. There's a whole different overlap of things there, of different levels of maturity dependent on what you need, right? You don't always have to go there to level 500 and have DevOps and ALM pipelines and everything. It could just be very tactical, that you've got a center of excellence and you're building apps in your business, and that could be the maturity that you just need at that point. So I think it's I know, go off and read it, but actually there's definitely a lot of content in there that's very valuable straight away to help you, at least give you at least an idea of where you are.
The other thing to mention is there's supporting documents as well. So you've got the maturity model, but then for each competency there's some supporting documents. So for example, we've got communication. Well, what do we mean by communication? And there's Simon wrote the principles of communication, like what is good communication. But then we also have how to elevate documents, and those really are more geared up as saying, right, you're at level 100 and you want to get to level 300. Here's some things which you should do. Now, these are they're not finished. They are good starting points, and they could do with some great community effort to make them better. But that is a way of saying, right, well, at level 100, to get to level 200, we need to switch these things on. We need to do these things, and they are a bit more technology focused on the 365 platform. So we've recently, we're just about to release the customization development one. So it might be to go from 200 to 300 in customization development. Get the Power Platform COE starter kit installed and start getting that into your 10 and making use of that.
Will that help teach Gary how to develop properly as well?
How dare you?
I thought I'd get in there before you threw it at me.
I've seen your code, Kev.
Touche. Simon H, apologies. I do keep muting you. You were going to.
That's quite right. I think there's a bit of feedback off my system. It happens sometimes. What I was going to say was, we've also tried to challenge some perceptions, maybe even misconceptions. So the customization and dev one is an interesting competency, because there could be some technology people, possibly even in this virtual room, who would go, yeah, but what we should do is have proper pro code development all the time. And actually what we've said is that a mature organization understands that there is a balance between these different styles of development and the different needs in different parts of the organization, and has a strategy that encompasses it all. And more developers isn't necessarily the right answer to every problem. I know, shock. And people may disagree, and that's okay. But they can look at this and go, oh, actually, our strategy is all around citizen development, and maybe that isn't right either. So we try to put these challenges out there to perceived or received wisdom.
I think what I love about all this is it gets people thinking. It gives people a framework to think about what they're doing. Whether you agree 100% with all of it, whether you disagree with a large amount of it, doesn't matter. As long as it's got you thinking about where you are and what you're doing, that is the bit I really love about all this. It gives people a framework to think about what they're doing, how their organization works, and think about where they want to be as well.
Yeah, I think that example that you gave there, Sam, was absolutely perfect. It's you utilize the low code citizen development tools to your advantage, and then you go and fill in maybe the 20% that you need that might need some pro development skills. Why do the whole 90% using just writing the code? Always a great practitioner that
hang on a sec, that's gone to 110% now.
All right, yeah. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that element which we've always come at with SharePoint development in the past, is you use what building on a platform, right? The platform has a lot of features in there that you can leverage. So understand what they are, and then you'll make better decisions going forward. So yeah, it's a perfect example.
Yeah, and don't reinvent the wheel, hey? That's
yeah.
Completely. So we'll put in the show notes definitely links to the documents in there. You mentioned the practitioners group, Simon. So if people have kind of read the docs, they've got involved in that, they want to hear more, I'll put some links to the practitioners group. That's open to everyone to come and join and sort of say, yeah, people drop in.
Absolutely.
And probably if people want to get more involved, that's a good place to start, to come and chat to people on there, find out more, as well as all, I'm assuming if it's on Microsoft Docs, it's all effectively in GitHub, so people can make pull requests, do all the contributions themselves, which will get reviewed. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about pull requests in GitHub, Sharing is Caring initiative, which I'll put a link to there as well. It's a great way of learning more about that. So you don't need to be technical to be looking and contributing to these. There's some great helpers with that. So I think we've talked about Great Happy an awful lot of getting people out and contributing to community. You two are both fantastic examples of that. But the more the better. And I think we're all consultants, obviously. What I also love about this is not targeted for consultants to use against clients. Anyone, whether you're financial services, pharmaceuticals, or their county councils using this, can go and review this and start to look yourselves within it. And I think that's fantastic. Yeah, don't let that stop you spending thousands on consultants, because that keeps us in a job, but you don't have to.
I mean, certainly in the practitioner groups, we see a good mix of people. There are people there who are taking the maturity model and using it within their own company, and that's great. And there are definitely some consultants there building their practice around being able to do maturity model based consulting. And sometimes we even see people who are in companies who are waving it in front of the consultants and saying, we need you to do this to us. So it cuts through in every direction.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. So thank you very much for sharing that. As I say, and anyone listening wants to find out more, check the show notes. There will be details in there. Simon, any final words you want to add at all?
Just thanks for inviting us and letting us talk about the maturity model, and keep up the good work with the podcast.
Thank you very much.
And from my point of view, get involved. Tell us what's missing. Tell us what's wrong. Tell us what you need, so that we can, we as a community can make this set better. This stuff sits across a increasingly wide spectrum of activity, but we're not the experts in everything.
Just to reiterate that, I think Simon was talking about the maturity model for Microsoft 365. The same does apply to Grey Hat Beard as well. with all those comments. So do let us know what you like. We're not really experts across everything, and would certainly love to hear more about where we can improve in that, and that could include Kev, stop wittering on so much. On that note, I will say thank you very much to both Simons for joining us today. I know Al's very sad not to be able to join and chat on this one. We as Grey Hat Beard will be back this time next week with all the latest news. Going to have to find some, Gary. I think it's been a little bit quiet post build, so I'm hoping something happens.
Sure, there'll be something.
A few bits that come out we can chat about. Yeah, exactly. We find things to chat about from nowhere. Otherwise, I've been Grey. Our hat isn't with us.
I've been Beard.
Thank you very much, and speak to you all next week. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Grey Hat Beard Podcast. The song Drink Up My Mateys was brought to you by Black Bones under a non-commercial attribution license.